Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and this is the Breaking Free Show. And I am so happy to have you join us today. As always, I know we're like a big family, a circle of love, and we are learning and growing together and doing the breaking free thing. And I was going to say, what do you see as breaking free? Well, how do you use it? So for me, breaking free is all about, the self empowerment. It's having the power, my power to do what I want with it. And that means education, being inspired by other people, learning a new tool, a strategy, a technique, a philosophy, something that talks to me, where I look at that and go, uh huh, a little freer,
Really?
a little more time to fly in. Amnon's a character. Amnon is our producer, and he has a sense of humor. So what was that?
Really?
Oh, thank you. A little joke here and there. Anyway, that's what it is. And today you're going to have some fun with it. And you're going to just, break free a little bit more and then a little bit more and take another freedom step towards wherever you want to go. And sometimes those freedom steps take us forward. Sometimes those freedom steps even take us a little back. But going back sometimes is just okay because that's just regrouping and saying, okay, let me assess. Let me be the fly on my own wall and see where I need to go next. Let me look at the playing field. It's changed. Let me regroup. So it's fun and freedom. Gotta where do you go get freedom from? Well, you gotta get free from something. Free yourself up from some experience. Sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's something stuck, something it's a job, it's a philosophy, it's a way you've been looking at something, and then you come to my show, our show here, and you say, "Uh-huh, if they can do it, I can do it. If she can do it, I can feel that way." And that's exactly what we're here for. So, Amnon, good morning.
Good afternoon.
Oh, yes, that's right. How are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah, you good?
A little anxious.
About?
The weather, I mean, yesterday during my show, the power went out twice. And even though I don't care much about power going down because we have
Right,
ways to deal with it,
right.
both UVerse and Spectrum went down
At the
when the
same
power
time,
went down. So it was,
it's
I mean,
messy.
but it's a
Okay.
technical show. So
So people understand.
yeah.
Well, people understand the internet. So, where we broadcast live and we're on the internet and things happen and we just go with it. So what can you do, right?
Yeah.
All
Things
right.
happen is
Things
a good
happen.
way to
And we've
say.
had some snow here and it's been a little early to have some snow and some crunchy ice. So anyway, all right, let's get on with our show. So good to have you here. Thank you so much. Oh, good to be here. Thank you. Okay. So remember, anytime during our show, you are more than welcome to call in and you can use our phone 919-518-9773. You'll come right into our studio. And then you also can connect with us on Skype, and that is computers, that's plural. Then the number 2K voice, you will come in on Skype voice, no picture. And we have a chat. So if you want to come in there and comment and ask questions and send us some information, you can do that as well. If you look underneath the video where you are watching the show right now, you will see a place to put your name, nickname, whatever you like, and it will open up the chat window for you and you can enjoy the show by communicating. So let me introduce my guest to you. Justine is here, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of things. And we're particularly going to be talking about our word and. Sometimes we just don't realize some of these things like, and we take things like that for granted. So we're going to get into that. So before we get on, I want Justine to tell you who she is and what she does. So welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so
It,
excited.
it's a pleasure. So tell everybody who you are.
I'm Justine Froelker, and I am an author, speaker, and certified Dare to Lead facilitator. And so what that basically means is I have been in traditional mental health for over 19 years. I'm a licensed professional counselor by trade. And I started my career working with clients who struggle with substance abuse. And then I moved into clients who struggle with eating disorders, then into anxiety and depression. And then my husband and I went through an infertility journey. And after I did some of my own work, I started really working in grief and loss. And I've been trained by Dr. Brené Brown and her team for the last 5 years. So I'm a certified Daring Way facilitator and a certified Dare to Lead facilitator, which means I am basically one of Brené Brown's like foot soldiers here on the ground. So I teach her curriculum and love to teach this work of what it is to practice our self-love and the action of self-care, of rewriting our stories into our enoughness, of turning the hard parts of our stories into the big parts of our stories. And so I do that through running workshops and online programs and speaking engagements and writing books.
And TED Talks.
And TED Talks.
And TED Talks.
I have TED Talks.
So just for our audience's sake, because many of them I'm sure are familiar with Brené Brown and many of them may not be. So why don't you just give a little overview of who Brené Brown is?
Of course. So Dr. Brené Brown, and that's Brene. So a lot of people don't know how to spell her name, but so Dr. Brené Brown is a shame and vulnerability researcher down at the University of Houston, Texas. She has been gathering data for over 16 years. We're in the hundreds of thousands of pieces of data that she has, that she focuses on vulnerability, shame, courage practices. And she has written 5 books at this point. And I mean, I think at one point when Rising Strong came out, which that was the third to last book, she had 3 books in the top 10 of the New York Times bestselling list for like over 6 months. I mean, it's insane. So her latest book is called Dare to Lead, basically where she is packaging this work into the leadership realm of our world. And so if you're not familiar with her work, I always tell people start with her TED Talks, obviously. Her most famous TED Talk, so famous that it's the 4th most viewed TED Talk of all time, is called The Power of Vulnerability. My favorite of her TED Talk, though, is actually called Listening to Shame. If you've never read any of her work and you have a lot of things going on in your life, I recommend you start with her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, just because it's almost like a quick guidebook, and she gives you ideas of like where to start. But my personal favorite book is Rising Strong and Now Quickly Becoming Dare to Lead.
So, and from my personal experience, she is a phenomenal storyteller. When you listen to her speak, and this is not a commercial for Brené Brown, this is just heart to heart.
She doesn't need a commercial.
No. She is fabulous. When she speaks, it's so natural that no matter where you are in your journey, in your life, in your journey, you feel good listening because she's not talking at you. She's just sharing from her heart.
Yep.
And she is not this person who began her career saying, I am going to be on the stage, I'm going to be famous, I'm all of this. That's not who she was.
No.
That's who she's turned into being someone who is talking to a lot of people. But from my experience watching and listening to her, she's using what she can to share the message of, of how much blame we've experienced, how much shame, our vulnerability, all of those things, vulnerability. So her TED Talks are fabulous. She's a great storyteller. You will be able to connect. So now,
yeah,
you're one of the things that I noticed from some of the work that you're doing is this notion of and you also just launched a book, right?
Yeah.
And what's the name of your book?
So this latest book is called The Complicated Gray, which is what I call the permission of the and.
Okay.
So my first TED Talk was in October of 2017, and I had been submitting to TED for almost 3 years, and then I booked 2 within a month of each other. So my first one was what I called the permission of the and the permission of the and is this concept that I came up with after we went through a failed infertility journey, and I had to dig my way out of the dark. I had to start practicing what I had been teaching to my clients for the last 12 years. I had to figure out how to make this a gift because I had every reason in the world to be mad and to be angry forever, to be bitter. And I didn't want to be that. I refused to believe that I had been brought through what I had been brought through just to be bitter and a shell of who I once was without the ability to ever go back.
Okay,
And
can you
so-
hold on one
Yeah.
second? Because that's a very important
Mhm.
statement, because there's a lot of people, a lot of us, me included, who have an experience. You can either go to bed with the covers up, never come out of your house again, or take a look at that and go, well, that was really awful. Now, did I have that to kill me, or did I have that for another reason? You know,
Right.
and we're talking about the other reason.
Right.
Because it's
Resilience.
yeah, because it's when you have those experiences, they're too big not to use them for something good. Too big.
Right.
So go ahead. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like none of us will get out of this life unscathed. None of us. We will all have traumas, losses, and tragedies. And they're all hard. And there's several points to that I could even teach on, but we have that choice to, yes, surrender to the process, because some of these things just cannot be helped, or like we have no choice over what has been done to us or happened to us in some aspects of our lives. I absolutely have choice of how I respond to it. So I can surrender to the process and choose to do the work to see the gifts in everything. And that's what this permission of the and is. When we give ourselves permission to walk into the muck and the mess, what I call the complicated gray of what it is to feel more than one thing at the same time, to be happy and sad, to be in the dark and light, to be in trauma and choose to do the work to make it a gift. It is there in that mess, in that muck, that our clarity and our healing lies. And so my own story is that gift to teach this, because I am a forever grieving mother. We lost 3 babies in our infertility journey and it didn't work. We don't have children. We have not ever felt called to adopt. So we live what I call a childful life. I work and create and receive opportunities to mother, because I don't get to mother my children here on earth. So I am a forever grieving mother. And I'm a woman who chooses to do the work to see the gifts in everything and to make this a gift to help others, to serve the world, to make my life better.
So I was just a little speechless for a minute, which isn't always the case, but I thank you for saying it the way you said it. I mean, I don't think I've heard anybody express it quite like that before. So I do appreciate you giving us and that side. And I will say that this is the paradox of life, is to be in the, that's the paradox, is that you're in the light and the dark at the same time. And love is love and love is painful. So that's the paradox. That's how it is. So so your journey, so what did you do with your and? Whoop. Did she just, was that?
Well,
Oh,
hi.
there she is. Okay. And do we have a caller at the same time? Okay. So what did you do? You had what?
It just quit.
I know that was pretty interesting, because it could be the weather, but it doesn't usually happen like that. Usually when somebody goes away, they go away for a little bit of time and then it's like, okay, you just like flashed. So I don't know.
All of a sudden it was like, Skype is closed.
Yeah, man, really, it just happened quick. I don't know. So what I was asking you is, tell us how you did your and.
What I found is like when we ended our journey and with broken hearts, and infertility is, number one, it's really common. People don't understand how common it is. It is affecting someone that someone is struggling to conceive or has lost a child. And our brains are so wired to be dark or light. You're all the way sad and you've got to be broken forever. And I couldn't receive that. I could not let that be my truth. And so as I started to dig my way out of grief, which I'll be honest, I dug my way out of grief by writing down 5 things on a Post-it note to do every day. And 4 of those things were simply human obligations: eat, sleep, move my body, and drink water.
How long? Wait a minute. How long? So you did that when you decided?
When we were done.
When you were done.
Yeah.
Okay,
when we had to end the journey without the paid for result, without what we dreamed and planned, right?
Okay.
And so I had to dig my way out of that grief. And so I did. I just started with the basics, and I added coloring, because I've taught self-care to my clients for years, my entire career. And eat, sleep, move your body, and drink water, those are human obligations. Those are not self-care. Those will not fill up your soul. However, if you are in a deep, dark place of grief, or you've never, ever taken care of yourself, or you've never observed someone taking care of themselves, you probably got to start with those human obligations. And so I did that. I started with a Post-it note that I literally checked off those 5 things every day, probably for about 2 months. And then I added one more like true self-care thing, like meditation. And I'm not a good meditator. I'm not a natural meditator, but I found a way to do it, even if just for 5 minutes a day. And that started to dig my way out of the dark.
Yes, I can completely understand that. It's almost like you have to do something mechanical. It's like you have to turn it over to, okay, I'm consciously putting one step in front of the other.
Right.
And you do that for what however long it takes. You don't leave it up to your own imagination and your own willingness to get out of bed. You have to literally say, okay, every morning at 7:00, I'm getting out of bed, and do it. And you have to literally treat yourself like that in
Right.
order for it to happen. Yes, I completely
Because
understand.
there does have to be action. There
Yes.
has to be action. Otherwise, nothing will change. And so, and it's not easy, but, and that's why it started with that Post-it note with 5 things. And now 6 years after my journey, it's hours of pouring into myself. It's many things that I do that I choose to fill myself up and love myself so that I can go out and serve the world and love others. And because I am doing this work.
Oops. Okay, so go ahead. We
frozen?
lost you for a second because you're doing this work.
Yeah. Because I'm doing this work and rewriting my story and filling myself up first, I am able to serve more and help others more. And I'm actually happier doing it.
And that is the airplane model, right? Where you put the oxygen on yourself first,
Absolutely.
because if you can't breathe, you can't put it on somebody else.
Absolutely.
I mean, honestly.
And I know, like, self-care is such a buzzword right now. I feel like just like authenticity, it's a buzzword. And one of my big pieces of whether or not you read one of my books or you do an online program or you just follow me on social media is that
So she's come back as we've had. Okay, we're having it a little choppy. So you just said, and
Okay.
follow you on social media, and then
Right.
What did you
So
say after that?
if you follow me on those places or do any of my programs, you'll find that I'm going to teach you this material. I'm going to give you some of the ideas. I love resources. I will send you to tons of different people. I will teach you how to implement true change in your life. I think so many people are consuming personal development and self-care resources and things like that. They are reading the books, they're consuming the videos. They're not making real change in their lives. And that just has to be one thing. If it's that Post-it note with the human obligations with one extra thing for a while, start there. Don't get so overwhelmed that self-care has to be this like hour of doing meditation and things like that, because that's not going to work for a lot of people. Right. Especially at the beginning.
Right. You have to do what works in your life. Really. Right. So let's go back to this notion of the and. So how else are you seeing the and being used? I mean, because some people can look at it like it's an excuse.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not. Go ahead.
It's been interesting since the TED Talk came out. Because this book, The Complicated Gray, that just came out, it's been written for almost 3 years at this point. It's been quite the struggle to get this book out, which is exactly goes with the story of it for sure. I had kind of joked when it launched last week, the week before ish, which that was a whole other thing, is that this book needs its own book. But like, when the TED Talk came out and people knew I was working on this book, I started realizing that people began using the permission of the and as a place. and it's not a place. Because a lot of times when you use this permission of the and, like, well, I'm happy and sad, or I'm full of sorrow and joy, our brain is wired to stay comfortable, which means it'll self-sabotage us all day long. It'll make you snooze 10 times rather than get up and work out. It'll make you not do the self-care because our brain likes comfort. It doesn't like change. It doesn't, doing this work, what I call this work, is not easy. And you have to override the self-sabotage that happens in your brain. And so what I was finding after the TED Talk is a lot of people were using that permission of the and as this place to stay stuck. And stuck is a choice. The permission of the and is a tool that I use to move through the hard parts of my story, the parts of my story that I now refuse to call hard because they're my big parts of my story. Because when I called them hard, it didn't honor them and it didn't honor me. And it kept me stuck looking behind me in my traumas, losses, and tragedies versus in the rise and choosing to rewrite them.
Well, I can definitely see that being a place where people would stay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I could definitely see that. So it's so let's say you're saying you're sad and you're happy at the same time. That's an easy one, right? Which you might have been. You might have been sad and yet still grateful, right? The combination of words can matter and or pertain to a person's a particular situation. Because you could be sad and yet grateful for everything you have, right? So you're moving from, in that situation, you're moving to what? A whole nother paradigm of words? Or are you moving, what are you moving to?
That place of like the willingness to get uncomfortable with feeling them both and not believing the lie that wallowing in the sadness is any better. Or like, I think a lot of times we'll be like, well, I'm just going to be sad. Like, so I'm just going to sit in it. And I think the and allows us to sit with it. Because when we sit with it, it is the energy that it is to allow it to move through. Emotions are not supposed to sit. They're not supposed to be stuffed. They're not supposed to sit in our body and fester. They are energy that is meant to move through. But most of us didn't grow up in homes where we were encouraged to get curious about our emotions, right? So we haven't been taught the tools to do that. And so like the words are so powerful, like giving myself permission to feel, giving myself permission to sit with the discomfort that is with the and, that I am sad and I am happy. And let me tell you, I mean, the whole freaking month of December is that for a woman who can't have kids, who wanted them, right? Like, Facebook is full of Christian or Christmas traditions at this point. And so I also, 6 years out of our failed infertility journey, I love my life. I love my life. I can sleep in on Saturday. I have 3 dogs that are hilarious. I get to travel more. And I will always wonder who those 3 kids would be at 6 years old this year. It's happy and sad. It's both.
Are you by any chance saying that there were triplets?
No, so we had 3 embryos. So we actually did a surrogacy journey because I had 2 back surgeries in high school and I was in a body cast for a year of my life. And so we tried to have children with a surrogate. So we got 3 embryos and a couple rounds of infertility treatments, and we lost all 3 babies. They never took. So to us, they are our babies because they're what we got.
Well, yes. And when they go to do I have a daughter that's gone through this and another like daughter. And when you go to do it, they do say when they're putting the embryo in, they do call it your baby.
Yeah.
So it is a baby.
I wrote a blog post years ago for HuffPost, like we become parents the day we dreamed of becoming them. Like we especially became parents, even more of parents the day we like wrote the check for the treatments, all of the injections, looking at the pictures of the cells, like, and so it's loss. And I believe the more I do this work, especially we all have grief and loss, because I'd like to meet that person whose life turned out the way they hoped, dreamed, and planned.
Without some loss, you can't.
Right.
You can't.
It doesn't exist.
Yes, and I mean, obviously, I didn't know what you were going to talk about. I never do. But to be free, you have to have loss.
Yep.
You have to have lost
Oh,
something to free yourself up, because you don't. What's free then? I mean, what define it for me? If you,
right.
what do you free yourself from?
Right. I totally agree.
I mean, so it has to be. So
Mhm.
this is interesting, and it's and you know, it's kind of a gift you give yourself, is to
Oh, yeah.
say, you know, that you are mourning, and yet you still can, you know, allow yourself to to have joy in
Mhm.
other parts of your life. I mean, it is a gift.
Mhm.
And to love yourself enough to experience the mourning, and at the same time be able to have a little laughter here, you know? I mean, it is a gift.
Yep.
S So this is a very interesting, conversation, and an interesting way of looking at having permission, and being in, 2 feelings at one time that can be so different,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh. Well, and I think that's why I'm so passionate about teaching and advocating for people to practice self-love and the actions of their self-care. Because if we are not doing that, we don't have the firm foundation to actually feel those feelings, let alone both of them at the same time, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, that's a challenge.
right. So I that's how the a lot of the people will say, like, well, what are, like, you share self-care tips on Facebook every day. I'm like, yeah, and I will never not talk about taking care of yourself, because it has changed my life. It's allowed me to rewrite my story, because it is that firm foundation that I have the wherewithal to give myself permission to feel it all, to sit with it and not in it, and allow it to pass so I can rewrite it.
Interesting. So gratitude, appreciation, all of those, kinds of, you know, emotions that are not hard to have. I mean, they're easy. Those, there you can find something every day in your life, every moment that you got into your car and it went, that you know, you have light on, that you have some heat, that you have shoes, socks. I mean, you can find something every single day for, you know, to have the one emotion, and the and appreciation at the same time.
Absolutely.
And without having self-care, without having self-love, it's hard, it can be more challenging to have the and appreciation, and the joy, and the gratitude. So this is a great talk. Excuse me.
Mhm.
So, what other tools can you share about creating, about, you know, self-love? Because this is
Yeah.
an important, because this is a really important time for this conversation.
Yep.
It's a very busy time of year. People are doing things they want to do, and people are doing things they feel obligated,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yep.
Whether it's spending money and something else, or inviting people and something else, and saying no and something else. So what other
Right.
kinds of juicy things can you share?
Well, I always say, I share this message. It's so funny. People are always like, it's so interesting that you usually share this message around 4th of July, because it's when it starts almost like, and then it's the holiday season. Like, we eat food more freely, more fun food. We don't get as much sleep. We see people we don't see all the time, and maybe people that are not super engaged in our lives, and we feel obligated to spend time with them around the holidays. We don't say no enough. We overschedule. We drink more than we usually are. And so we're doing all of these things, and then we wonder why we're crabby, snapping at people, tired, and things like that. And so it's like, this time of year is, I don't believe it has to be that time of year where we're run ragged. And that is why I'm so passionate about this work. Why I share, especially my online programs during this time of the year. But like, We live in a world, this time of year or not, we live in a world that will tell you that you are not enough every single day. And then when you go to bed at night, I'm willing to bet your to-do list is not finished. And so then you tell yourself that you're not enough every single day. Then on top of all of that, we have these stories. We have our traumas, our losses, and our tragedies, the hard parts. And those things oftentimes tell us that we're not enough.
So hold on a second, though. I want to get into this a little bit, because it's not always the actual words that say you're not good enough. It comes in discreet ways. And no matter how good you are, and I think I'm terrific. I mean, I do a lot of work. I think I'm great. However, that subtlety of you're not enough can come very quiet. And and the more work you do, the quieter it is sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And it's harder to put your finger on it. Sometimes it can be right in your face, but a lot of times it may not be. And it's that one little thing that might keep you from something.
Right back there.
Right. That you want to pay attention. I'm not saying, I don't walk around feeling miserable and feeling this, I don't feel good enough about myself, miserableness. However, if I can find that one little thing, when I can find it, I don't obsess over it, and you don't necessarily have to either. But if you find that one little thing, that can free you up for a huge experience, a huge, great experience. So it's not always just huge. Sometimes it can be, but sometimes it's not.
Oh, no, because we're always bombarded by those messages. I mean, even if you take into consideration all the advertisements that we receive every day, like that's something that you're maybe not super cognizant of, but like they're telling us that we're not enough, that we have to buy something to make ourselves enough. And so like when you layer all of those things on, like it's going to be almost impossible to ever feel enough, no matter how much work you're doing. I mean, I have taught this work for over 5 years. It is in my bones. You cannot escape a video from my YouTube channel, a post on my Facebook without getting authenticity, vulnerability, shame work, courage work, whatever. And yet I will always have those days where my shame spiral grows out of control, and all of a sudden I'm believing the lie that I'm not enough, I'm invisible, no one cares, I don't matter. That's my shame spiral. And I know that that's going to make some people cringe and be like, "Oh my gosh," but I know your shame packs a punch too, because shame always packs a punch. And no matter where it's coming from, whether or not it's coming from your undone to-do list, a trauma in your history, a bad meeting at work, one of your kids who fought you today, whatever it might be, your shame spiral, that shame story that goes in your head is probably going to be born out of the foundation of I'm unlovable, I'm not enough, and I don't deserve. That's shame. Shame is that sense of feeling unworthy of love and belonging. It's that not enoughness. And so if I am not choosing my practices of self-care, because it's really hard to love myself with all of that not enoughness. So when I do my self-care, it's a practice of self-love.
So now bring us to this notion on some of the things that you've learned, that you've been studying with Brené Brown, and this Dare to Lead. Because here again, when you're a leader, you are, to be a leader, in my opinion, you have to be doing self-care. I mean, yes, we have plenty of people out here who are leading, who are not coming from self-care, not coming from love, but I don't consider that the kind of leader we want to be and become. For me, there's only one way of leading, and that's to lead from your heart. And you have to, so talk to us about that.
Yeah. So the Dare to Lead book, and it's a lot of the Rising Strong curriculum, but kind of reorganized, called some different things for leadership. But what we're really teaching is that courage is a teachable skill. We can teach courage. And if we're not aligned with our values, if we don't know how to rumble with vulnerability, we don't have courage skills in our business and our leadership and our families. And so people don't feel safe to show up. which means they're not going to feel safe to innovate and create. And when we have courage skills, we know how to rumble with vulnerability. We know the values that are leading our lives, family life and business life, all of that stuff. We have the language, the skills to show up as who we are and to rumble through the difficult parts in a wholehearted way.
That was a great way to say that. Rumble with vulnerability, because
Yeah.
it is, I mean, it will put hair on your chest. But seriously, you're being vulnerable, you're putting yourself out there, and it takes courage to put yourself out there in a situation you're unfamiliar with, doing work you don't know, talking about stuff, you're learning as you go.
Yep.
Doing this show, I'm vulnerable every time I come here, and I've been doing this for 7 years.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So rumbling with vulnerability.
Yeah. Well, and I do a in-person workshop here in St. Louis once a month where it's kind of an open enrollment group. And I'm going through the curriculum in its entirety. And of course, tomorrow night is rumbling with vulnerability. And whenever I do a call for any of my teams that I work with or things like that, I almost always teach on vulnerability, because most of us get so freaked out by the word and we just don't know what it truly is anymore. And so, like, that number one myth of vulnerability that Brené found in the data, that vulnerability is a weakness. And I do think that myth is beginning to change with all of Brené's work and all of the people in personal development that are working on, courage work and things like that. And at the same time, that still doesn't change the fact that most of us grew up in homes where we were not encouraged to get curious about our emotions. Oftentimes, when you said, I'm feeling scared, did your parental figure really look back at you and say, what's going on? Can you tell me more about that? Versus the family motto of, for us, chin up, dust yourself off, get up, get her done, buck up, keep it in the middle, whatever your family's saying was. And it's simply because they weren't taught it either. And it is starting to change. Vulnerability is not a weakness. In hundreds of thousands of pieces of data that she has, over 16 years of research, there is not one example of vulnerability that is not courage.
And my next book that I'm working on is with millennials. And I feel that millennials are, there's a lot of negativity.
Yep.
A conversation going on about millennials, and millennials are believing that too. They're beginning to believe the hype and the commentary because it's all over social media. And social media can very much help you to feel vulnerable, and not in a good way. When people do things and you're not quite sure of who you are, then you begin to copy the voice of other people, whether it's a happy voice, sad voice, a fearful voice, a strong voice, a courageous voice. So I'm finding that with millennials, that they are beginning to copy the fearful voice, and not for some, and not having, a clear picture of who they are. So they go from one end of a spectrum to the other. Either they feel incompetent, or they feel, or they're showing that they're very much in control and doing a great job. But many of them are feeling incompetent. Yep. And it's all this conversation going on social media, and we all face that. I'm certainly not a millennial, but you see other people doing things no different than what you see in advertisements, social media. You see posts from friends doing things, and you're like, oh, why am I not doing that? Or maybe I should be doing that, or
Right. That comparison.
Yeah.
That comparison is so.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about comparison, especially in the infertility community. I talk about comparison, but I bring it into just our everyday life, because how many times have we compared? Because we compare, obviously someone's highlight reel to our backstory, which is not ever going to be accurate, which is also why I love using social media, what it's meant to be used for, which is to connect, which means you still need to share the hard parts and be vulnerable. But that takes some courage practices and things like that. But also, comparison comes in a lot on the other side of things. Like, well, my stuff isn't as hard as hers, so I'm not going to talk about it. Or, and like, we have that like gratitude for, like, I call it like the opposite of wholehearted gratitude. Like, at least I have a house. At least I have a car. Well, me at leasting gratitude does not make someone who doesn't have a house have a house. Like, that is that empathy and compassion thing. And what we teach in the curriculum is that those are not finite things. Like, when we compare our hard parts of our stories, when we compare our struggles, when we compare our highlights to our backstory, all that is disconnection. And healing will never take place in disconnection. Healing only takes place in connection. And our world needs a lot of healing. Mm-hmm. But in order for us to connect, we must be vulnerable.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And here's a question. This is from Chris on our chat. And if any of you out there would like to ask Justine a question, you are more than welcome to engage. We'd love to have you do that. This is a personal invitation. So feel free to call in to 919-518-9773, or you can come in on Skype, and that's computers, that's plural, the number 2K voice. And you'll come in on voice, and you can join our chat as well by just putting your name underneath the video, and you can come in there. So here's a question. Once you are doing self-care daily, what is your favorite go-to technique to help people identify the light and positive, the positive light, or light and positive, I think is what she said.
Like, my favorite go-to, like, skill that I practice, you think? Or
yeah, I think, Chris, we need a little explanation on that. You can call once you are doing self-care daily. What is your favorite go-to technique to help people identify the light?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, and like I said earlier in the show, like, I am not a natural meditator at all. And I am such a believer in it. And I wrote a post for a HuffPost years ago, 11 ways to calm down. Like, because I think the reason that I have been able to sit my butt down in quiet for at least 5 to 20 minutes, more days than not, is because I had a toolbox to do it. Like, whether or not it's an app or a song, or you watch a candle flame, or you watch the wind through the trees, or you just count your breath. You do like one of the, hundreds of breathing exercises. But like, for me, like, that piece of like visualization, breath, sitting down, not attempting to like clear my brain, because that's not going to happen. It's not how I'm naturally wired, for sure. But I want to be able to listen to my brain in a true present state, to be able to remind myself of what my light is. And then if anybody does look me up on social media, I'm a Christian. So I do find my hope and peace in my faith. And I also believe that no matter if you're Christian or not, you got to find faith in something bigger than you. Like, in the curriculum, we talk about how we're all rooted in something that has love and belonging, whether or not you call that Mother Nature or the vortex or God and Jesus. I don't really care, but like, to believe in something bigger than us, because this life's too hard to do it by ourselves.
Yes. I mean, and we've made it, sometimes we make it way too hard.
Totally.
Really. And I also would like to add to that. Yes. When I heard you say the word listen, because that's my buzzword, listen to how you're feeling. You will know if you are feeling differently, even slightly. Listen to your actions. Maybe when you were feeling kind of, mournful or feeling terrible, you got out of bed at 9:00. Maybe one day you notice you got out of bed at 7 in the morning. Listen to your actions. Listen to what interests you now. Listen to, what you're doing daily. You will be able to identify the changes. You will be able to identify what's going on that's more positive. Listen to the people around you. Listen to when they compliment you. Listen when they say, Susie, you seem so good, or, thank you so much for doing that. That really was helpful. Listen to everything going on around you. You will see how things are shifting into the light.
Mm-hmm. Receive.
Absolutely.
To live from that place. I said it to my husband the other day. I was like, I will always choose curiosity to stay in this place of wonder and awe. I don't care what people think about it. Like, I don't want to lose this. Like and that is choosing this curiosity. It is not easy and it's scary half the time, but man, to choose curiosity as we move through this life, curiosity about our feelings, about other people, about what's going on in the world, about nature, about all of it. That's listening. That's opening ourselves up to receive what we need, because it's there. What we need is there. What's standing in the way most of the time is us. We're not open to receive it.
Well, I would compliment everyone out there who's here today and each and every week listening to this show or listening to podcasts or reading a really good book or, inching your way, as I said early on when we first started our show, taking one freedom step. I don't call them baby steps because I don't believe taking a step in any direction, any action, as we've been talking about, is a baby action. It's huge. I don't care how, there's no reason to even, measure it. It's huge. Anytime you take some kind of action, it's a big deal. And so so all of you out there, I compliment you for being here and doing the work you're doing and listening a little bit more each and every day, to gain these skills, because I don't care how many times I've heard the word courage or how many times I've listened to the word vulnerability or watched it in my practice with my clients or whatever I'm doing. I don't care. Every time I learn a little bit more, or it feels a little bit stronger to me inside of me, or I feel I have a little bit better handle on it. And what else can you ask for?
Yep.
Right? And with each and every little bit more, we get a little bit more stronger, a little bit more, closer, a little bit more connected, as Justine is saying. Connection. This is a very important word, connection.
That's what it's all about.
It's all about connection.
Yep. Yep.
It's all about, and I have a personal quote that the more united we are, the more independent we will be.
Mm.
So the more we can connect with each other, the stronger we are with who we are, right. And in our own right. And the stronger we are in our own right, the more independent we are, the more united we can be. So that is also, it sounds like an opposite, but it is not. One does not go where the other one doesn't live. Mm-hmm. It goes with, Okay. So what have we missed? What else do you have up your sleeve that you want to share with us that we have not covered yet?
What I want and what I know this world needs is more brave people. And when I say brave people, I mean people who go beyond knowing that they want more. They're ready to make a change. They're ready to step out and make a daily change in their life, to live their life a little bit differently. And to get past this lie that it needs to be something huge or whatever else, I think we can start so small, and that makes a huge difference in our lives. But like, our businesses grow, which means our paychecks grow, our relationships deepen, and our satisfaction with who we are grows when we choose the curiosity to get vulnerable, to live wholeheartedly, and to truly show up as who we are, flaws and all. And it doesn't mean that like you have to have this huge network of people, that you have to put everything out on Facebook or things like that, because vulnerability without boundaries is not vulnerability.
What is that? What is that?
Yeah. So this book, Complicated Gray, is technically my fourth book. My first book is a true memoir. This one is pretty much a memoir also. And so that does not mean that it is every detail of my life, even though I share very transparently on social media, because that is the platform that I have built. That's how I connect with people. It does not mean that it is the intimate details of my life. The people who get the intimate details of my life are a very select few people. In fact, their names fit in a 1-inch box. It's not everybody on my Facebook page, even though I share very vulnerably. So vulnerability without boundaries is not vulnerability. Oftentimes it's oversharing or gaslighting and things like, so it's like bombarding someone and a lot of times we do that because we want to connect with them, but that's not true connection. Vulnerability and trust is kind of like it goes hand in hand. One does not exist without the other. As I'm vulnerable, trust is built up. As trust is built up, I'm more vulnerable.
So that was a great explanation, because being vulnerable, there's an intention. There's a feeling, there's an intention, there's an awareness, there's a no, I mean, this is scary, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's right. If you overdo this vulnerability, it is not vulnerability, it is ego. And that is a very different place. Not that we're not growing from our unhealthiness or our ego. I don't want to say unhealthiness, but from our ego, we are. But over vulnerability is an ego thing, not because I want to learn. I'm scared, but I'm going for it anyway. That's a very different conversation than just without any kind of acknowledgement of what you're doing.
Right. And I've been learning this lesson a lot, especially lately with this book, because it's been a difficult launch. And
What's been difficult?
Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. To the point that it was released on Amazon and no one knew about it. And then when we received it, it had 50 pages of messed up spacing.
Well, I feel for you, because I've
that's what Chris said. Chris is
because my last book that I just launched about the twins.
Yes.
We had it scheduled to do a book launch, an actual physical event, on September 13th, and we had a hurricane. So we had to postpone it. And I had twins coming from other states coming in for the event, as well as local guests. And we scheduled it for October 11th. Now, understand, we don't have a hurricane every year. So we had a hurricane in September, then around October 11th, we had another one.
Yep.
So, but we had 75 people show up.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. And we could, but nonetheless, didn't mean that I wasn't beside myself.
Right. Exactly.
So,
and part of this journey for me has been because one of my things when I have a speaking engagement or things like that, and I think it's because of my therapy background. I do not think it's helpful when people only get up on that stage and share about the rise, because I think when we're only sharing about the rise, we get all the fans who are just the consumers and they're not making actual change in their life. We have to, I believe, share some of the struggle, not very much of it, because that's not really helpful. But since I have this brand that is very authentic and transparent, I'm learning this, what is my timeline as this is happening in real time, these things with the book, and I want this book to succeed, and I'm very proud of it. How much do I share with my audience in the moment? How much do I have to wrestle and rumble with those people in that 1-inch box? They get the intimate details. I have to work through some of the hysterics before I go public and share the struggle with my audience. I still have to work through some of my own, what's the story I'm making up? What's the shame story? Talk to my people first, and then share in a vulnerable way. So it's this and I want to share the struggle. And at the same time, I must honor my truth, my intimate details of my life, that not my entire audience gets that, because that's not vulnerability. Vulnerability without boundaries is not vulnerability.
And, for everyone out there, I mean, none of us, it's interesting sometimes when I look at a famous actor and actress and I wonder about their personal lives. And I think, oh my God, they must not feel this. And maybe they don't feel that, but they do. We all feel things that you wouldn't think necessarily somebody is experiencing when they're famous or they're this or they're that. And when you put yourself out there, as Justine is, as I am, and lots of people that I know write their life stories. I mean, sometimes, you don't always know exactly what you're going to do. You just have to trust, as she said earlier, and that is very true. You have to just trust. You trust yourself that you're going to do the very, very, very best that you can. There are times that you can plan your vulnerability, and your response, and sometimes it happens in the moment and
Yep.
you're caught off guard and you just have to trust that you'll do it right. There are plenty of times I've stood up on the stage and I've gone, oops, I didn't want to say it that way. And literally will go like this, oops, I take it back. That's part of the believability in who we are, that we're not saying these things because we haven't had these experiences. We're saying them, as I say in coaching all the time, I coach ethically because I've had a life. It's inevitable that somebody will come to my office to be coached, and I have just had a similar experience.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and we don't always have all the answers. So do you have your book handy? Do you have a copy of your book handy?
Not the new one.
No?
Okay. Well, that's how crazy it has been with these prints.
Like I understand. Yeah.
I had like I had 35 copies of the messed up prints, and it was like, okay, so it's going to be taken down. I need people to read this. And so I said, who wants to buy this? You're going to review it as soon as possible. So like my community rallied, and we did. When it went up at first, I was a #1 new release in grief for 2 days, which was amazing. And then it had to be taken down for a week for the new.
I know.
And it was just like, this is my first book. So
this show it to us.
This is Ever Upward. So this is my story through 2 back surgeries in high school and a body cast, and then our infertility story. But more so, it's about how I dug my way out when it didn't turn out the way we hoped, dreamed, and planned. And then The Complicated Gray, the newest book, it's my faith testimony. Because I always tell people there's not much like being a mental health therapist who hears terrible things in her office every day, who can't have babies. That makes you pretty mad at God or whatever you believe in. So that's what The Complicated Gray is really about. But in reality, it's a lot of stories about how to wrestle with the hard parts of your life and find that and to move through it, to rewrite it.
And it's on Amazon.
Everything's on Amazon.
Okay. And then, are they all linked? Are your books linked together? They're on the same author?
Yep, they're all underneath my name. And then my website's just my name. And so I have a huge resource page there with all my favorite podcasts and YouTube channels and books and things like that. And I have the whole blog is up there. The YouTube channel is linked there. I have over 500 videos on YouTube. I have a lot of content out there.
Good. Well, life has a lot of content.
Yes,
and so, and you have so here are my 2 current books up on Amazon: In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Men, and In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Twins, and soon to be In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Millennials, and then Addiction. And if you have a story of addiction, yourself in recovery, or working on recovery, or you are a family member, if you will reach out to me, I would greatly appreciate it. And you can be kept anonymous as well. And you can reach me at MarilynShannon.com, and love to have your story, and that would be great. So remember, if you're in recovery, want to be in recovery, struggle with recovery, it's fine. It is all okay. And I'd love to have your story, and as well as family members, loved ones, anyone. So final words, Justine.
Have the courage to take the actions to show up in your life. It is so worth it. It is so worth it.
It is very worth it. This side of courage, well, we're always working on courage.
Right.
But this side of courage, or the moment of being on the other side of courage and being courageous, is so worth it. And the other thing is, sometimes you need to find people with a helping hand.
Oh, yeah.
That will help you, that will hold your hand gently, hard, whatever it takes to help you, because you have that little spark of being courageous, even just to reach out to somebody. Yep. Give all of your sparks, all of your little granules of something. Give it acknowledgement, give it love, give it compassion, because it takes that little slit of something that helps you reach out to somebody else or do something that changes your story is a big deal. So, right?
Amen.
All right. Amen. So thank you all so much for being here, Justine. Thank you so much. Your energy is phenomenal. I loved it. and love to see you come back again.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I love being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Amnon, thank you so much for everything. And everyone out there, we love you. We really do. And so, take care.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.